So thank you very much for everyone to be here in the room. So let me just go back to my notes. I think because of the time, I will actually change a little bit the plans, not for the questions, so that the panelists are not lost into the plan that we had drawn up with them. But I wanted to make a longer introduction that I will shorten very much to make sure that they have time to share their knowledge and expertise, to make sure as well, if we can, to have a Q&A with participants and maybe also with participants who are online. I think there is something that Alejandro said just before, which is about the spirit of the European Accessibility Act, the fact that there is a need to actually change internally the way we are working, the policies, the initiatives. And I think this is something that we can start with. We have today a panel that will actually speak about the challenges that are faced by users. And I think this is really important. We need to start identifying clearly what are the challenges faced by users to be able then to develop solutions that will meet their needs, instead of, developing solutions and then trying to match them with possible needs. And at the end of the day, there will always be a gap and possibly issues, especially in terms of accessibility. So this is really something important. I will start with Sébastien, who is actually working at the European Banking Federation, who is hosting us today. So, Sébastien, I would like to ask you, how have you managed actually internally within the European Banking Federation to make the accessibility issue higher on the agenda? How have you involved members of your organization to make sure that actually the whole spirit of the European Accessibility Act will be conveyed across the sector?
Thank you very much, Julia. Thank you for the question. And of course, I'm very pleased to welcome you here as well as a EBF representative. And as you can imagine, indeed, the European Banking Federation has the umbrella of national banking association from across Europe. We have a quite good and comprehensive view on how accessibility is being tackled across a diverse national context. And I would like perhaps to highlight two key points, one of them also which led to the organization of this conference, actually. We identified also, and that's very important, already months ago, and that was really at the highest level at the European Banking Federation, accessibility really as a strategic issue, as a key issue. And not only because, of course, the Accessibility Act was coming into effect now in June, but also because we strongly believe that this topic must be taken, of course, very, very seriously. And we need to engage with the relevant stakeholders at the highest level. This is essential. And that's also the reason why we reach out to ONCE and decide actually to organize this conference with the aim of putting really accessibility very high on the agenda of our members. Of course, I'd like to thank also the chair of our executive committee, Maria Bascal, who was very adamant, of course, to on this. And this is also why we decided at the time that the European Banking Federation would join the advisory board also of the EU Accessibility Resource Center, once again coordinated by ONCE. So this is much more than a conference. I think it's a message that we would like to convey, that indeed the European banking industry take this very seriously. And I like also what we heard this morning, that's we hope that this conference will, of course, be the first of many, because Accessibility Act is, of course, a very important milestone, but we are still in the middle of the journey. We know that accessibility will require constant discussion, constant dialogue, and because also, as we heard this morning, I mean, technology is evolving, the factors around banking are evolving, and so this required constant development, constant adjustment on our side as well. No, that's one. At the same time, indeed, what we did to try to remain closely aligned with our members and the banks more in general is to establish a European Accessibility Working Group already at the beginning of 2024. And this group brings together experts from different fields, from legal, from retail, from payments, and many others, actually all the key areas impacted by the European Accessibility Act. And our goal was there twofold: facilitate, of course, peer exchange amongst banks about national implementation challenges, since we know that transposition is also different from member states to member states, and also, secondly, to channel structured feedback to policymakers and also standardization bodies. We have had physical workshop, notably with IMA and other leading EU stakeholders, including standardization bodies. I think it's very important what IMA said. It's very important that also the banking industry participate into the making of those standards. And so that's why we are very connected with some of those standardization bodies to help shape those future standards that also reflect the complexity of banking services. Now, maybe a few words about challenges. I know we're also pressed by time, but challenges, yes, of course. There were a lot of challenges. There still are challenges, and there will be challenges ahead. The scope of the Accessibility Act is, of course, quite broad. Online, mobile, ATM, websites, payment terminals. Also the Accessibility Act is overruling actually some of the national legislation which were in place. So this also required adjustment at national level. Well, of course, banks, perhaps less than before, are still also characterized by legacy system, which have been built across years. And those legacy systems need to be upgraded as, of course, digital channels. So the older infrastructures need to be adapted, and this is complex. This is costly sometimes, even more for smaller, I would say, actors or smaller banks. Now, another challenge is, of course, also the management of third parties dependencies. As banks relies also a lot of external vendors on softwares, but also hardware solutions. So to ensure that those providers also meet the accessibility standards, it requires negotiations, oversight, and sometimes also switching suppliers. Internally, a lot of challenges as well. And maybe the most important one is indeed to foster an accessibility by design culture, which involves training staff across department, from design to development to compliance and customer services. So this is, of course, very important, and this also requires time. Maybe a last challenge, and this is also perhaps an opening to the next question that we will have, but I want to mention it is of course the balance that we need to be found between accessibility and also security or cyber security and user experience. I think it was mentioned already very much. So there are some of those measures like strong customer authentication, measures like two-factor authentication or the CAPTCHA, which can create indeed barriers for users with disabilities. So we need there as well, really, from the start, from the design also of those legislation things about, people with disabilities or people or older people, to ensure that they have, of course, inclusive access to financial services across the EU. So in short, I think we are not just implementing, of course, the European Accessibility Act, but we try to help building a shared understanding how to make accessibility in banking meaningful, practical, and also sustainable, notably by sharing good practices amongst banks.
Thank you, Sebastian. So we've heard about the challenges faced by the banking sector, also internally, given that somehow they depend on externals as well. I will now move to Luis. Luis is actually working as head of information and accessibility unit at ONCE. Luis, can you maybe elaborate a bit on, I know that Lars already shared a number of challenges that persons with visual impairments and blind people are facing. Would you maybe elaborate a bit on the challenges faced by persons with disabilities at large, I would say, covering many different disabilities, and maybe also explaining how organizations like ONCE and sisters organization in other countries are voicing actually the interest of persons with disabilities in this area.
Hola, buenos días. Muchas gracias, Julia. Gracias a la organización por darme la oportunidad de poder expresar los problemas que tienen las personas con discapacidad visual a la hora de utilizar los servicios bancarios. Gracias a todos los asistentes que están aquí y de forma telemática por el interés. Y muchas gracias también a Paula, que va a hacer las tareas de traducción para mí.
I would like to thank the host of the event for the opportunity to present our issue, also to those who are connected as well as those who are here with us today and are interested in getting to know our difficulties. Also, I would like to thank my colleague Paula, who is doing the translation task today.
Durante mi intervención voy a explicar los motivos por qué es importante que exista la accesibilidad en el sector bancario, pero el motivo más importante, que quizá no se nombra lo suficiente, es que hay que cumplir una directiva europea, en este caso la 2019-882, y en el caso de España su transposición a la legislación española en la ley 11/2023.
During my intervention, and to begin with, I will quote some reasons why it's important to fulfill the accessibility in the banking sector. But the main reason I think is, and although it's not mentioned, it's the obligation that the sector has in enforcing the Directive EU 2019/882 and the translation of this law in Spain, the law 11/2023.
Existen varios problemas. Uno de ellos es el acceso, la accesibilidad a las páginas web o las aplicaciones. El poder utilizar y contratar servicios, productos a través de la página web o a través de las aplicaciones es muy importante. Primero, por confidencialidad, por autonomía, pero también es importante porque nos permite realizar operaciones sin tener que desplazarnos a las oficinas. Esto es especialmente relevante en el caso del colectivo de personas con discapacidad y las personas con discapacidad visual, porque son personas con movilidad reducida.
It is of crucial importance the possibility of accessing any product or bank service via web or app. It becomes particularly important in the case of visually impaired people because it allows them to operate without the need of going to the bank office, having in mind that it's a group with mobility issues.
Otra cuestión muy relevante es el acceso a la información. Si no tenemos acceso a la información, no podemos conocer los productos o servicios que una entidad bancaria está ofertando, sus condiciones y, más importante aún, en el caso de información contractual que requiera la firma del usuario. Es importantísimo que el usuario, que la persona conozca qué es lo que está firmando, y esto tiene que ocurrir al conseguir la accesibilidad en esa información.
Other problem that the visually impaired people face is to know the products and services that the banking sector offers and the conditions. It also gains a special importance when we talk about contractual information that must be signed.
Otro gran problema es el acceso a los dispositivos. Por ejemplo, cajeros automáticos. Los cajeros automáticos tienen que ser accesibles y poder ser utilizados y comprendidos por cualquier persona, por supuesto por las personas con discapacidad visual también.
One dispositive that must be accessible and understandable to be used for anyone is the ATMs, especially those functionalities that cannot be approached via web or app. Yes.
Otro gran problema que encontramos es con los TPV táctiles. Aquí, las personas con discapacidad visual nos encontramos con que no podemos introducir el código PIN cuando nos encontramos con un TPV táctil. Esto es un problema pues vulnera nuestro derecho a la autonomía, nuestro derecho a la privacidad, a la confidencialidad, pero más que un problema de accesibilidad, es un problema de seguridad.
In the case of the POS, we are focusing on the problems that the visually impaired people face when they must enter the PIN code in this tactile POS. I would like to highlight that in this case, this is a security issue, not an accessible matter.
Hay que tener en cuenta que este problema de seguridad afecta a un colectivo de personas vulnerables, como es el caso de las personas con discapacidad visual.
Also taking into account that this security problem affects mainly to a vulnerable group of people, the visually impaired ones.
Desde el Grupo Social 11 estamos elaborando un documento en el que se recogen criterios de accesibilidad para que estos dispositivos puedan ser utilizados por todas las personas y está dirigido especialmente a fabricantes de TPV, a desarrolladores, entidades bancarias, entidades certificadoras, etc.
The Social Group 11 is drafting a document with accessibility criteria concerning POS. This is directed especially to manufacturers, software developers, banking institutions, financial services, institutions, and certification authorities.
Esta solución que se contempla en el documento está formado por 4 puntos fundamentales. El primero, el software que permite o que determina cómo una persona con discapacidad visual interactúa con la pantalla a la hora de utilizar o de introducir el código PIN.
The proposed solution in this document it's based on 4 fundamental points. The first one is software, which determines how the user interacts with the screen.
El segundo son un protector de pantalla con señales táctiles que se coloca de forma fija en la pantalla para referenciar las teclas más importantes referenciarla de forma táctil.
The second ones are the tactile marks on the screen. This is essential because certain buttons need to have tactile marks. This is obtained by placing a tempered glass screen protector that has these tactile marks and it's overlapped with a virtual keyboard. This protector is not for punctual use. It must be installed permanently in the equipment.
El tercer punto es un motor áptico que nos va a reportar cierta información mediante vibraciones, muy importante también para las personas con sordoceguera.
The third one is the optical signals. It provides complementary information to the visual and the sound one, so the deaf blindness people can use it too.
El cuarto punto son unas marcas táctiles en los laterales de la pantalla que coinciden con el principio y el final de las líneas del teclado de código PIN.
And the fourth one is the tactile marks at both sides of the screen. These tactile marks should coincide with the rows of the visual keypad.
Nosotros lo que decimos, lo que defendemos es que los TPV de nueva fabricación deben cumplir como mínimo con los puntos 1, 2 y 3, software, marcas táctiles en la pantalla y motor áptico.
We consider that a newly manufactured point of sale must have at least the first, the second, and the third points implemented. The software, the tactile signals on the screen, and the optical signals.
Y en los TPV que ya están en explotación, que están en la calle, consideramos que como mínimo se debe conseguir software y marcas táctiles en la pantalla.
And those point of sales which are already in use must have at a minimum the points first and second implemented, the software and the tactile signals on the screen.
Hemos realizado un estudio con Mastercard referido a las dificultades que tienen las personas con discapacidad visual y con sordoceguera a la hora de realizar pagos.
We have made a survey in collaboration with Mastercard to see the problems that visually impaired people have when they make a payment with a card in a POS. Some of the data that we have drawn out.
En este estudio hemos sacado algunos datos interesantes. Más del 50% de la población encuestada tiene problemas a la hora de realizar pagos en comercios físicos.
More than 50% of the people surveyed have problems when making a payment at a commercial establishment.
Más del 63% de los encuestados tiene problemas a la hora de realizar pagos con un TPV.
More than 63% of the people surveyed have problems when paying with a POS.
Y alrededor del 70% de los encuestados considera muy importante que disponer de marcas táctiles en la pantalla de los TPV.
Around 70% of the people surveyed consider that it's necessary to have tactile marks on the screen.
Voy terminando. Desde 11 lo que hacemos para colaborar, para mejorar estos problemas que puedan existir, en primer lugar, elaborar documentación, documentos técnicos como el que hemos nombrado de TPV o documento de accesibilidad en cajeros automáticos que ya lo tenemos publicado.
To finish, from 11, to help these people with these problems, we elaborate documentation with criteria that may be helpful, forming the basis to companies, manufacturers, or institutions.
También participamos en grupos para elaborar normativa técnica.
On the other hand, we participate in law and directive amendment and actively contribute in groups who develop laws and regulations.
Aportamos enmiendas cuando se abre el proceso de aportación para directivas o leyes.
Yeah.
¿No? Y también mantenemos reuniones con los distintos actores de este escenario, como pueden ser entidades bancarias, fabricantes, desarrolladores, etc.
And the last one, we have frequent meetings with banking institutions, certification authorities, and dispositive manufacturers to explain them the problem that visually impaired people face in these environments.
Thank you very much, Luis, for this exhaustive Wednesday. I will now move to Karin van der Kruisen, who is working for the Dutch National Bank. I think what I will do, Karin, is probably to cover the two questions already so that we slowly move towards the second set of questions as well. So first of all, can you maybe remind everyone what's the roles of national banks? Because I'm not really sure it's obvious for everyone, and especially in relation to accessibility, what kind of position you have and what can you do actually to work in that direction. I know that you are working as well and you have a lot of expertise in relation to accessibility. You are doing yourself lots of research for the Dutch National Bank. So maybe you can also share a bit your insights and what your findings are actually and could be of interest.
Yes, it's my pleasure being here. So the task of central banks is to, they seek to safeguard financial stability and thereby contribute to prosperity.
No,
So central banks, they want to safeguard financial stability and thereby contribute to the economy. And for central banks, trust in the financial system is key. And for trust, it is important that we have an inclusive financial system. So a financial system that works for everyone is a system that you can rely on. So accessibility is very important, and we want as many people as possible to do their banking independently. So as a central bank, we cannot do this alone. So we work a lot together. A good example, which was also mentioned earlier this morning, is the National Forum on the Payment System. So jointly with organizations representing both the users and the suppliers of payment services, we work closely together to ensure a reliable, safe, efficient, but also important for today, accessible payment system. So we do this together and we keep track of the accessibility of the payment system. And what we noticed, we saw a deterioration and we wanted to know the size of the people that struggle with the digital environment as well as their needs. So we did a thorough study and we found that the group was not only large, but also very diverse. So it's not only older people that struggle with the digital world, but also, for example, relatively a lot of people with a disability, people that have difficulty reading, people without internet access. So really a mixed group. And we saw that their dependence on others evoked different feelings, from feeling embarrassed to frustrated, to feeling sad, to feeling inferior. So it was really clear that more action was needed. So banks stepped up their efforts and they set up a program to work together and made improvements. The banks individually but also joined and also joined with advocacy organizations, which is also very important. And looking ahead, they will step up their efforts even further, because it's really important that we work together in this respect. And then if we have a look at the research that we did, we found that people struggle especially with non-daily banking activities, such as downloading a banking app, but also doing online shopping, whereas, well, most people can buy an ice cream on a sunny day independently. So that was a key finding. And also we saw various challenges and ways to improve financial inclusion. So the first one, I heard it earlier today as well, is that it's important to also maintain the non-digital world. So there are a lot of people that still need cash because they find it more easy to use, for example. And we also see that there are a lot of people that really need to have personal contacts with their bank. So that's also important to improve that. A second thing that we noticed is this shift towards a more digitalized world creates challenges, but can also be the solution to use technology in a better way and really to adapt it to the user. It's not that it's one size fits all, but it's really that you need to adjust it to the needs of the user. What works for one does not need to work for others. Then a third thing that we noticed is that banks are really stepping up their efforts, and there are really great initiatives. For example, more and more workshops are now given to help people with the digital environment. They're improving personal contact with banks, but there are also a lot of people that are not aware of these nice initiatives. So it's also important to improve awareness about that. And the final remark that I want to make is that I did research on payment literacy, so specifically measuring knowledge about payments and about fraud in the world of payments. And we see that there's a lot of room for improvement there. And this is important because people with better knowledge, they trust the financial system more. They're also more likely to adopt new products and able to use it in a safe manner. And those people with higher knowledge are more likely to do their payments independently from others. So it's also important that accessibility goes hand in hand also with knowledge.
All right, thanks a lot, Karin, for this overview of what the Dutch National Bank has done. And I think we will make sure that in the proceedings of the meeting today of the conference, there will be as well links to the different research that have been done, because that can provide you with even more information. I think we all agree and we all see the fact that digitalization is actually going at a fast pace, and there's lots of impact actually. So while we are trying to understand the challenges faced by users, it's also we also need to look forward and to see what could happen, what can happen next, given how fast it goes again. Arjun mentioned the fact that artificial intelligence is now giving lots of pressure in terms of fraud and scams. You know how all the users notably are facing these issues and how they can try to continue trusting a system while new things are happening so fastly. I would like to ask Sebastian how the European Banking Federation is actually looking at these new challenges which are emerging, coming really fast, but that we also need to look forward actually to make sure that we try to ensure security and safety.
Julia, thank you. I'll be quick because I know we are running a bit of our time, but I would like also to thank Luis, by the way, for the the list of concern and challenge that he raised with, and also solutions that he put forward, which shows that indeed we need to continue working together to address them. Now, on digitalization, you mentioned it, which goes very quick. We have, of course, important concern on fraud. Digital fraud is evolving even faster. We believe that public awareness, and you mentioned it yourself, you know, the sharp rise on authorized push payment scams, where fraudsters impersonated trusted entities, banks, family institutions, and by which they trick people to sending money. So those are, of course, huge concern we have with for bank clients generally, but also even more for more vulnerable people or groups, such as indeed perhaps older people with disabilities, or more generally also digitally less literate people. And the emergence of AI just add on, I would say, making those risks and those threats even more important. I think just take a few seconds now to make a sample of audio video featuring you. AI can impersonate your voice, your image, and this makes, of course, traditional fraud detection or even two-factor authentication less effective, because the threat is now emotional and behavioral and not just technical. So what we very much try, and I will be very short on that, what we try to say is that we really need to work all together. Of course, the banking sector authorities, but also other very important players like platforms, social medias, ICT or telecom firm, to work hands in hands to make indeed and to take into account also accessibility with digital safety and design. We need to work with standardization bodies to try to anticipate as much as possible both the needs of users, but also the tactics of criminals. Because we believe that, of course, accessibility at the end is not just about reaching people, but it's also about protecting them. So it's a responsibility for all of us. which will require more and more, cooperation, dialogue among the main stakeholders, including, of course, authorities.
Thank you, Sebastian. And I will, last but not least, turn to Luis for maybe the last questions. Luis, I will just ask you to maybe try to make it like in 2-3 minutes, because we are running out of time for our panel. What can you tell us about these kind of additional challenges that we are now facing? I know that digitalization is bringing a lot and can offer lots of opportunities, which are really important, and you mentioned them already. Do you see any new challenges, any new things that your members and your members' organization are actually notifying to you and sharing with you?
Realmente los problemas que hemos detectado los hemos nombrado aquí, ¿no? Imprescindible, importante garantizar el acceso a las páginas web y a las apps.
Well, as I mentioned before, maybe the access to bank services must be improved and guaranteed via web or app.
También es necesario, es importante tener acceso a la información, especialmente si se trata de información contractual.
Also, to all the information that it's generated, paying special attention to the contractual information.
Y el acceso a los dispositivos, en especial los cajeros automáticos y los TPV. En este sentido, os tengo que decir que la solución que hemos comentado antes ya existe. La tenemos en 11 en nuestros TPV de nuestros vendedores de lotería.
Also, the access to the bank service dispositive must be guaranteed, like ATMs or POS. In ONCE, we have an accessible POS that our vendors are using right now.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Luis, for already sharing some good practices. I think we are going to have many more actually in the next panels. I'm turning to Guillaume to see if we have, no time for Q&A. So I think what I will just do to close this panel is maybe to repeat what Alejandro said, because I think he believes very much in repeating, and I think this is important. We saw from the different challenges raised by users that this question of multimodality is really probably critical, and something we need to consider as well as part of this accessibility framework, and that is really important on top of the change of spirit within the whole coming months to implement the European Accessibility Act. Thank you very much to the 3 panelists, and I'm
Thank you to you.
looking forward to the next panel.